Greetings, friends, family, and survivors. Been running the heater on the fifth wheel, the forced air heater, for 36 hours, and it's used 20% of the batteries. Just clicked over to 79.9%. So that's pretty efficient. And the other thing that we did is we put the microwave in up here, and I ran it on the inverter. Put 16-ounce glass of snow in it, and it melted it in 2 minutes. And I think it was pulling about 1100 watts. The logic controller only uses half a watt, which is pretty reasonable. But most of the time the inverter is going to be off. You know, I have a CPAP machine, so I ordered one of those adapters for 12 volt. You just plug in right there, and that'll save the efficiency loss of going AC to DC twice. Go from DC to AC to the inverter and then back to DC again for the CPAP. It's got to be a better way, so I'm sure just going straight DC is going to help with that. And the other thing is we've got the cat door installed. I don't know if I showed you this before. Had Dad make it. He cut it in there and he made this piece of oak to match and stained it to match. One thing about these Alpenlight trailers is it's all solid oak. There's no cheap paneling in it anywhere. It's solid oak. And there's no wood in the walls or the ceiling or the floor. It's all aluminum. So I put a new shower curtain in here. So I guess Carol's idea is you put the cat box in the shower, and then Roger can go in and out. And then if you need to take a shower, you put the cat box on the loo. And that's only 5 months, right? That's why we have the little water and the feeder for the cat. But by doing it that way, I get to keep my chair, which is pretty important to me. I don't know if you can see it, but there in front of that solar panel, you can see that I added a piece of aluminum angle with a really high grade VHB tape down the aluminum roof and a couple of brackets there. And that'll hold that front edge down. And my concern was, picture going down the 2-lane highway at 60 and there's a semi coming the other way at 60. You know, the wind that's generated when two large vehicles pass. I didn't want to tear those solar panels off, so the leading edge of the solar panels have 24 inches of brackets now holding the front edge down. Of course, that'll just unscrew and those panels tilt up when we get there. So this lumber here is siding for the well house and a skirt that goes around the whole fifth wheel. This whole section is going to close in. This will be lockable storage, so I can pull my quad in underneath here and also keep the wind from blowing underneath. Get your ball, boy. So I am feeling a little better. Thank you for all the prayers. Looks like my gallbladder is going to come out on the 8th. And then we won't have that problem anymore, hopefully. So I need to decommission the solar system on the chicken coop, and it goes on this shed before we move it. I need to install a workbench in here, and then that's ready to ship. That's the first kit for the roof extension. Both of these sheds Has 16-foot roof extensions on each side of the shed, and one of them's going to be enclosed for the Jenny shack. And Dad built a kit here for the well house. Get a light on here. So this is the well house, prefabbed. It's designed so we can have R21 in the walls. Then the inside has 2-inch tech foam. And he built the door on tapers. So you can see that big taper there. So they'll be able to seal on foam. And this will go on a slab. Have a metal roof. And we'll side it with pine siding. Maybe fir, I don't know. I've got both. And so we're trying to make as much of it here as we can. It's so much easier to prefab stuff here than trying to build it up there on the mountain. So I was 9 days flat on my back, and I got up at 4 in the morning and said, you know what, I'm just going to go on to emergency and room. It's so much easier, because if you make a doctor's appointment and then they send you to this test and that test, and it takes you a week to figure out what's going on. But if you just go to the emergency room, they do it all right there. So I got the CAT scan and the ultrasounds, 2 of them, and did all the blood work. And they knew right what was going on right there and had me lined out with a surgeon before I left the building, all in 2.5 hour time. It's just the way to do it. Why mess around? So I deliberately went in at 4 in the morning because I knew the place wouldn't be crowded. I try to maximize my time. And so my eyes were yellow, and I had a yellow rash all over my body because the liver was shutting down, and the pancreas was shutting down because it was backed up because of a blockage from a gallstone. So looks like the gallbladder's going to have to come out. So this is the next project. I used my stethoscope. I could hear a light knock in this engine, and I've heard them in the 6.9s before. Never heard it in the 7.3. But it almost sounds like a bottom end knock, but it's not. So you take your stethoscope and you put it on the top of each injector. These are all real quiet. When I get to the back 2, that one and the one on the other side, it's like there's a hammer and they're going whack, 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 whack. Well, that's the injector failing. And if you don't deal with it, they will separate. But they start overfueling before they separate. And if you overfuel those cylinders, you'll glaze the cylinder walls. So it's best to deal with it, even though it runs fine and the power's normal. It's just time to deal with it. So I didn't get remans. I just got new injectors for it and new fuel supply lines, the little return line kits and all of that. So that'll be tomorrow's project. I borrowed a overhead creeper from one of my sons. These new trucks, you get a 2015 or newer diesel, you can't work on them without an overhead creeper. You can't even touch the engine without one. This one's not too bad to work on, but I thought working with a busted rib and everything, it would be a whole lot easier if I had that. I did finally get the power brake booster. Had to have one made. It's very expensive, but touch the brakes and it locks up all 4 wheels, and I like that. That's what a truck ought to do. I ought to be in control of the brakes. If your tires are skidding, let off a little bit, right? You don't need all this ABS stuff. Although it does have a proportioning valve after a fashion. So once the injectors are done, I think this thing is ready to go into service. So it'll pull the tractor over the mountain within the next 30 days. So we'll load test it going over the mountain, hauling furniture and that kind of stuff. Make sure everything's good before we put a big load on it. The other thing was, for you motorheads, this particular truck didn't have a tachometer from the factory. They did in that year, but just this one didn't have it. And right there in that injector pump housing, there would be a sensor right there. And I think I even have one of those laying around with a sensor. But then I have to pull the pump, and it's really tricky not losing your timing when you do it. It's possible with a mirror, but it's not fun. But then I would have to get a tap or build a wiring harness up to the instrument bezel and buy a new instrument bezel. And I didn't want to do all that. So I found a way to do it from autohack.com. I got a fairly nice 3 1/4 inch tachometer, and it's got, this end just needs power, and then it's got a your dimmer circuit for the backlighting, and then it's a radio signal. So up front doesn't need any power. All it is it's a sensor that picks up the pulse from these magnets that you put on your harmonic balancer, and the magnets generate the power and send the radio signal, and it's already pre-calibrated, so there's no wires between here and the sending unit. It's all radio. And it seemed like to be the least time consuming, least invasive way of me knowing for sure what my RPM is pulling that mountain. And I know I can go 37 miles an hour in third gear without any problem. That's winding it right up there with 410 gearing. But what if I have to drop down into second gear and I'm forced to push the 14, 15 mile an hour mark with a very heavy load in second gear? I want to know for sure what my RPM is. I don't want to guess at it at that point. I want to know. So it's worth it to me to put the tack in. So I got this little bezel that's actually for a Harley Davidson. It was only 20 bucks. And it's designed to strap down to a handlebars or something. Anyway, hose clamp. It's got a slot for a hose clamp, and it fits this gauge perfectly, and just strapped right down to that. And I think that's going to be the best way, cheapest way, least time consuming way. So the truck's got new wheel bearings, inner and outer, on both sides, and seals. And it's got a fresh alignment done by the best shop in town, Henderson Lineup in Grants Pass. They're just the best in Oregon, in my opinion. They do, big rigs, big RVs, Class A RVs, race cars, four-wheel drives. They're expensive, but they do it right. And they do it once, and they do it right, and they guarantee their work. So they did this. They did this for me, just for parts, and I thought that was pretty nice of them. They know it's for the mission, and so they just wrote it off and did it for parts, and that was a real blessing. So we've got new wheel cylinders in the back, and new disc brake calipers up front, new pads. The brakes are new. The hydraulic lines are all new. The parking brake cables are all new. I think it's going to be a good truck. It's got a new alternator, new fuel pump, new starter, new master cylinder, a new clutch, slave and master, new sending unit for the oil. I just think it's going to be, and it's got new hoses and new belts, full set. So Carol said, how much are you going to spend on this truck? I said, way more than we paid for it. So I don't know where we're at with it, but I think we're probably, with the winch, I'm probably at about $5,500 on the truck. And you can buy a beater, a 1990 diesel F250 beater with 400,000 miles on it for $5,000. That's what you can get around here. And I really didn't want air conditioning and cruise control and all that electronic stuff to fail. I just wanted something that I could work on that would run And so in '83 is the first model year that they put the diesel in the Fords, and it's perfect. Just bare bones, no electronics, just what I needed. Only going to be me and Mr. Gibbs riding in it anyway, right? So the reason why I couldn't find any PV blaster locally, so I got this stuff. And what you do is right around the base of the injector is you soak it for a couple of days in a row. Just soak that seat and let it get down there into the threads. That way, if the copper ring was leaking and any carbon did build up in the threads, it's the least likely that you're going to have a separation when you pull the injector. Because if it has been leaking, quite often the injector comes apart in two pieces. And then you can Google how to deal with that. It's not too difficult, but it's better to take every precaution you can before you get started by loosening all that up. So I'm going to spray that in once a day for a couple of days, and by tomorrow morning it's going to be ready to come apart. I also got another muffler for the Chinese knockoff, because I'll probably use this one during the construction process up on the mountain. And then when I get the generator shed built and closed in, then I'll go ahead and move the diesel and the DC generator up there and controllers and all of that. But this one, the guts were coming apart on the muffler, so I need to put that in before I go. Anyway, I'm really thankful to have the gallbladder thing behind me. Dying's no fun. It kind of hurts. And I guess from what the surgeon said today is there's a risk with passing gallstones. Apparently my gallbladder's got more gallstones in it. And she says, depending on where you're at and how severe the blockage is, it can be fatal fairly quickly. So their recommendation is just take it out. So I think that'll probably be the best thing, to just have it removed. I don't want to go through that again. It hurts, and you get very, very ill. So I'm really thankful that we have the medical industry that we do have in this country. And I'm just really thankful that I came through it without, major incident. It's a little bit of a setback, but that's okay. We're on the Lord's timing. It's up to Him. Our target date was March 1st. And my last day at Calvary Chapel Grants Pass was going to be bringing the message, both services, on the 28th. Well, that's just put off almost exactly a month. It looks like the 28th of February now will be my last day. So we're just pushed back about 30 days. And the Lord knew that was coming, so no reason to be stressed out about it. It's all in His timing and for Him and for His glory anyway. We don't have anything else going on but serving Him until He comes, and it's joy. So I'm kind of thinking that this is a real plus, that this happened now. I know it's a blessing that it happened now rather than later, having it happen the week that I'm trying to move everything and leaving Carol to deal with me in the hospital, and living up on the mountain without the trailer set up, and that would just be really, really dumb. So I'm thankful to get this stuff behind me before we go. All right, Mr. Gibbs. Have a blessed day, folks.